Hello everyone, I am Brett, aka the Connecticut Gamer, and today I'd like to talk to you guys about some of what I think are the best tips for someone who wants to get into collecting retro video games. Stay tuned. So I know that when most people make a video like this one, they end up making it very opinionated, and they say, oh, I recommend you get into ABC system, or I recommend that you don't get into XYZ system. And a lot of it is very much influenced by their opinions. And I don't want to make that kind of a video. I just want to keep it very straightforward, very organized, not opinionated. Of course, there will be a few sprinkled in. However, that's not really what I'm looking for this kind of video. With that being said, let's get right into it. So, the first piece of advice I have for someone who wants to get into collecting video games is to collect for whatever system you want. And I know that a lot of people will say, oh, you gotta start with the NES, or they'll say something like, oh, the Super Nintendo is the best system, you might as well start collecting for that, or any system really. And I don't think that's a good way to look at it. When I first started collecting, the only systems I had readily available were the Xbox 360, the GameCube, and the Wii. And so I chose to focus most of my attention on the Xbox 360 because the games for it were normally the cheapest. Although GameCube games were pretty cheap when I started collecting. And also, that was by far my most used system, so I'd actually use all the games that I collected for it. Whereas with something like the GameCube, at least at the time, if I collected a game, it'd just sit for a little bit, which I didn't like. And so I chose to collect for the Xbox 360. However, let's say you happen to have a PS4 or Xbox One. Just because right now in 2022, that's not seen as a popular system to collect for, doesn't mean that you can't or that you shouldn't. If that's what you own and you're happy with collecting for that, then by all means go for it. And I think that that's a big piece that a lot of people mess up on. Even I messed up on that. I had bought into the whole, oh, you have to start collecting for the NES, and that's the first system I bought with my own money that I didn't get at like a yard sale, garage sale kind of thing. I went into a retro video game store with the intention of buying an NES or an SNES, and I walked out of there with my NES. And it wasn't a bad purchase. I love the NES, I love the games for it, I love the library. But I personally would rather have not done that and just bought 10 games for the Xbox 360 that I would have played, or 10 GameCube games, or like 8 Wii games kind of thing, instead of just going out and blowing all this money on an NES. However, you live and you learn, as I did. And obviously, my collection has grown quite a bit since then, but I'd say that's the biggest piece of advice I can offer anyone, is don't buy into having to collect for a certain system first. The second most important piece of advice I can offer to anyone who wants to get into collecting video games is to collect the games that you want to collect. Obviously, there are going to be outliers that you want but you can't have. good example of this is for quite a while I had wanted Snow Bros for the NES. However, as you guys probably know, that's not exactly a cheap game to get. And I had to wait quite a while to find a copy. So this is my copy of Snow Bros. I don't have the original box, but I have the game and the manual in a protective case inside of a clear plastic protective case. And that's because it's a rare and expensive game. However, the best example I have of a game that I just wanted to get it, and this one was solely for nostalgia reasons, is Cars on the Xbox 360. Because I had this game when I was a kid. I then gave it to one of my friends because I didn't play it that much anymore. And I got it again 10 years later, roughly. Now, of course, I own the must-haves for the 360, so I own the Gears of Wars, Halo 3, I have Forza Motorsport 4, Forza Horizon 1. I have a lot of the first-party Microsoft titles that you'd think that anyone who owns a 360 needs to own, on top of owning every Call of Duty except for Black Ops 2. I don't own that. I own a few of the Dead Rising games. I have Portal 2, which for anyone who knows me knows that that's a great game in my opinion. I have a lot of the Assassin's Creed games. I have a lot of games. I have, I believe, 49 or 50 games for the 360. Yet I chose to get this one. That's how it is sometimes, though. That there are just games that, for one reason or another, you just want to get. And that's a prime example. My next piece of advice, and the last two were more just good to know things, but this one is a monetary thing. And that is, don't worry about things being in the box. Now, there's a difference between a box and a case. This is a box. It's cardboard. The game inside it is a cartridge, not a disc. It isn't needed. This is a case. It's made of plastic. The game inside it is on a disc, not a cartridge. And while it's not needed, it is very nice to have them. Yes, there are people who do decide to keep all of their discs on a spindle or in a binder and throw out all the cases. Does that save space? Yeah. Do I recommend it for if you ever plan on reselling a game, though? No. You lose a decent amount of the game's value by getting rid of that case. However, boxes they're cool, they're nice. I like having them, especially for systems that I don't use a lot. It's just nice to be able to put the box on a shelf with the system in it. Like, up there I have my Wii, complete in a box. I don't use my Wii a lot. I have a GameCube for all my GameCube games, and I don't have a very good Wii library. So I just keep it up there. But boxes, you don't need to worry about them. I mean, if you can find one for a decent price, sure, by all means, but don't be worried about finding them. Like, don't pass something up just because it's not in the box. However, boxes and cases are different, and you need to remember that. Good rule of thumb is, if it's a disc, it's going to be a case. If it's a cartridge, it's going to be a box. The only real exceptions I can think of is, I believe the Sega Master System and some Sega Genesis games came in cases, even though the cartridges. But basically, plastic is almost always a case, and cardboard is a box. cardboard is almost never a case. Another piece of advice I can give you guys that definitely serves a monetary purpose and will also just help you out a lot in general is to let family and friends know that you're into video games. Now, for me, this really only comes into play with my Uncle Sean and my friend Isaac. Because Isaac has sold me probably 15 to 20 Xbox 360 games over the years. All for a decent amount below market. And then my Uncle Sean will normally just gift me the stuff that he doesn't really ever use anymore. Like, I haven't physically gotten it from him yet, but me and him have talked multiple times about how I'm going to get his Wii balance board and all of his Guitar Hero stuff, or actually I believe it's Band Hero stuff for the Xbox 360 because he doesn't use them anymore. And he knows that I use them and I'm into collecting that kind of stuff, and so he's going to give them to me. And that's just a good thing to get into, is just to let people know that you're interested in that. That's a great piece of advice. Because 99 times out of 100, something is going to be cheaper getting it off of a family or a friend than it's going to be buying it at a store or online. So the final piece of advice I can give you guys, and I cannot stress this one enough, is to keep your collection organized and clean. So when I say organized, you may think I mean something like what I do. So all my systems in order, A to Z, by the time the systems came out, so on and so forth. And that's not what I mean. What I mean is that all your games have a home and you know where that home is. So it's alright if they're not all categorized or anything like that. You just need to know what stuff you have. And I know that I've seen people do that before, is that they just throw all their stuff in a bin or so on and so forth. They don't keep track of it. And they buy something they already had because they didn't realize they already had it. I've actually seen a few people do that before. And so I think that a big piece of that, actually a really big piece of that, is that keeping your stuff in bins, it's less of a thing you want to do and more of a something you have to do. So, like, with my setup, the bookshelf you see behind me, along with the hutch that's behind the camera, me and my grandmother got those for free off the side of the road. And before that, all my stuff was in bins scattered all over my floor. And that was terrible, because all my stuff was disorganized. I didn't really know what I had. I had almost bought a couple of duplicate games. Just not fun, not recommended. And so, therefore, a good piece of advice would be, if you can get shelving or just somewhere to keep all of your games, just have them in one spot or a couple of spots. That makes life so much easier. And I cannot stress that enough, is that being organized and keeping everything in a certain spot is so helpful. Like, I know, say for example, that I want to play NBA Jam on the Super Nintendo. Let's say I misplace the game and I find it 3 days later. Well, I know right away, because all my stuff's alphabetized. N. So the game before I have is Mortal Kombat 3. The game after is NCAA. B comes before C. So it goes right there. It's not hard to do. It would be hard if you inherited a large collection, you did it all at once, or if, like, say you moved and you had to do it all at once. But what I did is as soon as I got a couple games for a system, I instantly alphabetized them. And the only ones I've had to re-alphabetize are the NES, which was a pain, and I had to re-alphabetize the PS2 and GameCube because I took that stuff down for whatever reason, which was a pain too. But that's just a good rule of thumb, is that things should be alphabetized because it's a lot easier for you. But it all comes down to personal preference at the end of the day. However, what I think is a great thing to know and something to keep in mind is that being organized will save you time and money. It really does. With all that being said, I believe that's going to wrap up this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Really helps out with the algorithm. And I will see you guys in the next one.